Welcome back to day 4 of Arthurian April. Today we're going to change our approach a little bit. While there are dozens and dozens of characters that I can talk about, today I want to talk about one of my favorite authors in the Arthurian canon. Now you'll notice that most of the people that I'm talking about in my past videos sound like dudes, because they probably were dudes. It was much easier to get published and to be renowned for work that you did when the entire system structure was built around your success and not the success of anyone else. Which all makes it even more astonishing that we have the work of Marie de France and that it is such an important part of the Arthurian story as we know it today. Now, in the 12th century, a lot was happening in Western Europe. There was a rise of more prominent women that were more well-known, better educated, and able to have voices. So we certainly have people like Eleanor of Aquitaine and the famous Eloise of Abelard and Eloise. We don't exactly know who Marie de France was, but we expect she may have been around some of the circles of Eleanor of Aquitaine, as well as potentially an illegitimate sister or relation of Henry II. There's a chance she could have also been an abbess, which would have given her access to education and the ability to read and write. One of the only ways that women were really allowed to do that, unless you were rich enough to, be able to buy your way into it. What is particularly cool about Marie, and one of the things that I love the most about her, is that even though in the Middle Ages it was sort of considered not the most popular tact to sign your work as yourself, she was very aware of her perception in the world and wanted to be remembered. And in fact, in the end of one of her works, which is called St. Patrick's Purgatory, she writes this, and this is of course a translation. "I shall name myself so that it will be remembered. Marie is my name. I am of France. It may be that many clerks will take my labor on themselves. I don't want any of them to claim it." And I just love that 1,000 years later, I feel this woman's pain and concern that some clerk, some man, is going to take credit for the work that she's done. There are a number of things that Marie wrote, her fables, in addition to the lays, and a lay, or L-A-I-S, is a kind of poem, often potentially set to music, certainly connected to the troubadour tradition. They're often referred to as the Breton lays because they were in the area of Brittany in northern France, and would be passed from person to person. This is how stories were translated at that time, when the majority of the population couldn't read. Her writing is so evocative and symbolic. There's very, very often references to kinds of animals, birds, the environment that they're in, the kind of flora that are near them. So you hear a lot about hazel and honeysuckle and things of that nature. It's also got a wonderful supernatural bent to it. So there are all kinds of mysterious women that come in and out of fairy, and this sort of connection to a much older Celtic past that has since kind of faded away after the sort of the move of the Romans, and then of course the Catholic Empire. One of the things I love the most about Marie's writing is that you really feel that she's in the middle of this vibrant medieval tradition of Arthuriana everywhere. She is French, but keep in mind at this time, France and England, the back and forth, it was all over the place. So Arthurian stories are just as French as they are English, despite them, occurring mostly in the British Isles. But she name drops other characters in her stories, like in Chèvrefeuille, which is the story that she tells, which is the Tristan and Isolde tale. She mentions Sir Yvain, who's the knight with the lion, and yes, an actual lion, just kind of in passing. And what I love about that is it's sort of like, picking up one edition of a comic book of the Marvel series, and they just happen to mention Captain America in one of them, but it's an Ant-Man story, right? The audience knows who you're talking about. You don't need to stop and say, oh, by the way, this person is, this particular knight, he has a lion. No, people are just imagining that he's there in the story. So it's like really alive to me, the way that, and part of it is because it has this sing-songy quality to it. You really feel like her lays were the kind of things that people were actively telling in their time in a way that's more vibrant than a lot of the others of that period. She also loves love, right? So there's a lot of tension between the lovers and her stories. Bad things happen to them, wonderful things happen to them. As I mentioned before, there's like supernatural fairy queens, all kinds of things that are happening. But there's like an intensity of emotion that I find really, really beautiful in her stories. It's definitely not all sunshine and rainbows either. That, like I mentioned earlier, there's death. There are consequences when people fall in love with the wrong people, and the courtly structures can't really withhold everything that's happening. She seems to really enjoy being in that kind of difficult moment. And speaking of difficult moments, there may be no more of a difficult couple than poor Tristan and Isolde. And in the Lay of Chèvrefeuille, she talks a lot about the symbolism that they have between them. So just the Cliff's Notes: Isolde, married to King Mark, total jerk, falls in love with Tristan. Some of the stories, they have a magic potion, but I think they just fell in love with each other. But they can't have each other. There's all these abductions back and forth. King Mark is Tristan's uncle. It's a whole mess. It's a whole thing. And they don't get to be together most of the time. So what I love is this little section that I'm going to read from this particular lay. When Tristan knows that Isolde and her retinue are going to be passing by a certain area, he gets a stick and writes his name on it and puts it by the side of the road from the hazel tree, and wants her to give her this message. So I'll start right here. So he wrote his name with a knife. If the queen noticed it, if she gave it her full attention, she would understand well when she saw it that the stick was from her beloved. It had happened to her once before, and she had indeed noticed it. This was the meaning of the message that he had imparted and told to her, that he had been there a long time, had waited and remained to keep watch and to find out how he could see her, for he could not live without her. It was exactly the same with the two of them as it was with the honeysuckle that had attached itself to the hazel tree. When it has so entwined itself and taken hold and completely surrounded the trunk, together they can survive quite well. But if someone then tries to sever them, the hazel tree quickly dies, and the honeysuckle as well. My beloved, it is the same with us, neither you without me, nor I without you. So very lovely and romantic, but also terribly sad, but wonderfully symbolic. So if you haven't ever read the Lays of Marie de France, I highly recommend it. I have a couple different versions, a couple different editions. They're very short reads, they're very beautiful, and it is pretty astonishing that one of the foundational writers of the entire Arthuriana story is a remarkable woman. 1,000 years later, I guess we did remember her.